My name is Victor Hale, but most people just call me Grandpa Vic. I'm 71 years old, and on what should have been a calm, familiar moment, Christmas afternoon in my own living room, everything shifted. The tree was lit. Carols hummed low in the background. And then the smell changed. Smoke drifted through the room. I didn't shout. I didn't lecture. I simply asked, politely, if she could step outside. The room went quiet. My daughter-in-law didn't answer. She smiled. And that's when my son reacted. Not the way a son should. Not the way I expected. In that single moment, I understood something I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't being disrespected by accident. I was being replaced, on purpose. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I let Christmas continue, because sometimes the smartest move is to let people show you exactly who they are, and then act later when they're not watching. I'm going to tell you what happened next, how one cigarette on Christmas Day revealed where I truly stood, and how that clarity led to a decision that changed the balance in our family. But before I begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? To everyone who's ever been quiet just long enough to see the truth, thank you for being here. And if this is your first time on the channel, subscribe and turn on notifications. This is where patience turns into power. Now, let me tell you what my son didn't realize that day. I spent 3 weeks preparing for that Christmas. Not because I'm sentimental, though I suppose at 71 you're allowed to be, but because it mattered. It had been 3 years since I'd hosted the family under my roof. 3 years since Leslie, my ex-wife, decided she preferred her sister's condo in Florida to our 38 years of marriage. 3 years since the house felt like anything other than empty rooms and the hum of a refrigerator I never filled properly. But this year, I wanted to do it right. I cooked for 2 days straight. A honey-glazed ham that took 4 hours. Garlic mashed potatoes from scratch. Green bean casserole the way my mother used to make it, with those crispy onions on top. I even baked rolls, because my daughter-in-law Winifred mentioned once, maybe 2 Christmases ago, that she loved fresh bread. I decorated, lights on the porch, garland on the mantel, the old artificial tree I'd dragged up from the basement, the one with half the branches bent from years of storage, but I fluffed it out and strung lights until it looked halfway decent. I hung stockings, one for each of them. Even bought small gifts to tuck inside. Nothing extravagant. I'm on a fixed income. But thoughtful things. A scarf for Winifred. A pocket knife for my son Derek. A gift card for my granddaughter Rose. I wanted them to feel welcome. I wanted them to want to come back. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about getting older. It's not the aching knees or the way you forget why you walked into a room. It's the quiet. The kind of quiet that sits in your chest at night when you realize the phone hasn't rung in 3 days. The kind that makes you wonder if you've become optional in your own family's life. So when Derek called 2 weeks before Christmas and said they'd come, him, Winifred, and Rose, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. My younger son Patrick said he'd come too, along with his fiancée Jessica. That made 5. 5 people in a house that had felt too big for one. I could handle 5. I could make 5 feel like a celebration. Christmas morning, I was up at 6. I set the table with the good china, the set Leslie left behind because she said it reminded her of obligations. I folded cloth napkins. I put out candles. I even polished the silverware, which I hadn't done since the divorce. They arrived around 2 in the afternoon. Derek came in first, holding a bottle of wine I knew he'd grabbed from a gas station on the way over. Winifred followed, her coat draped over one arm, her heels clicking on my hardwood floor like she was walking into a restaurant and not her father-in-law's home. Rose trailed behind them, headphones in, barely looking up from her phone. Patrick and Jessica arrived 10 minutes later, warmer, easier. Jessica hugged me and told me the house smelled amazing. Patrick clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You went all out, Dad." I had, and for the first hour, it felt good. We ate. We talked. Derek told a story about a job site mishap that got everyone laughing. Winifred complimented the ham. Rose even took her headphones out for a few minutes. I poured wine, refilled plates, and felt for a moment like I'd done something right. Like I'd earned this. Like maybe I wasn't optional after all. But then, after dinner, after the dishes were cleared and everyone had moved into the living room, Winifred reached into her purse. She pulled out a pack of cigarettes. And without asking, without stepping outside, without even glancing in my direction, she lit one. The smell hit me immediately. Sharp, stale, the kind of smoke that clings to curtains and seeps into upholstery and lingers for days. I waited. Maybe she'd realize. Maybe she'd put it out on her own. But she didn't. She leaned back on my couch, exhaled slowly, and tapped ash into the palm of her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. So I said it. Quietly. Politely. "Winifred, sweetheart, would you mind stepping outside for that? The smoke gets into the fabric and my lungs aren't what they used to be." She stopped mid-drag. Her eyes flicked to Derek, and then she smiled. Not a warm smile. Not an apologetic one. A smile that said, "Watch this." Derek didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. And in that look, I saw something I'd never seen before in my son's eyes. Something cold, something calculated. Something that made my stomach tighten before he even opened his mouth. Winifred was still holding the cigarette, frozen midair, that smile lingering on her lips like she was waiting for a cue. Patrick shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Jessica stared down at her lap. Rose pulled her headphones back on. And then Derek spoke. "Dad," he said, slow and deliberate, "can't you just let it go? It's Christmas." I blinked. Let it go. As if I'd asked her to leave. As if I'd screamed or thrown something. As if a polite request, in my own home, where I'd spent days cooking and decorating and trying to make them feel like they mattered, was somehow unreasonable. "I just asked her to step outside," I said, keeping my voice level. "That's all." Winifred finally moved. She stubbed the cigarette out on the edge of a decorative dish I kept on the coffee table. My coffee table, and dropped the butt inside. Then she stood, brushing invisible lint off her pants, her expression perfectly neutral. "It's fine," she said lightly. "I didn't realize it was such a big deal." But her tone said the opposite. Her tone said, "You're being dramatic." Her tone said, "You're the problem here." Derek stood too. "You know what?" he said, reaching for his coat. "We're leaving." The room went silent. I felt my chest constrict. "Derek," I said quietly, "son, I don't understand. I wasn't trying to." "You've always been like this, Dad." He said it flatly, matter-of-factly, like it was something everyone already knew and I was the only one pretending otherwise. "Always controlling, always making everything about you. Maybe that's why Mom left." The words hit me like a fist to the sternum. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Patrick stood abruptly. "Derek, come on, that's not—" "Stay out of it, Patrick." Derek didn't even look at him. He was staring at me, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. And behind him, Winifred was gathering her purse, her coat, moving with the kind of smooth efficiency that told me this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. Rose stood reluctantly, still not looking at anyone, and followed her parents toward the door. I wanted to say something. I wanted to stop them, to fix this, to understand what I'd done wrong. But I couldn't find the words. Derek paused at the door, his hand on the knob. "We'll talk when you're ready to apologize," he said. And then they were gone. The door clicked shut. The house was silent except for the low hum of Christmas music still playing from the speaker in the corner. I stood there, frozen, staring at the spot where my son had just been. Patrick broke the silence first. "Dad, I'm so sorry. That was—" "It's fine," I said automatically. But it wasn't fine. Jessica stood and gently touched my arm. "Victor, you didn't do anything wrong. You know that, right?" I nodded, but I didn't believe it. Because if I hadn't done anything wrong, then why did it feel like I'd just lost my son? Patrick and Jessica stayed for another hour. They tried to salvage the evening, ate dessert, made small talk, pretended everything was normal. But I could see the pity in their eyes, the discomfort. When they finally left, Jessica hugged me tightly and whispered, "Call us if you need anything." I nodded, and then I was alone. I stood in my living room, surrounded by decorations I'd hung with hope, plates I'd washed by hand, a table I'd set for people who'd walked out over a cigarette. No, not a cigarette. Over something else. Something deeper. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the decorative dish. The cigarette butt sat in the center, ash smudged around the edges. I stared at it for a long time. And then I noticed something. Winifred's purse had been sitting on the couch. When she stood, something had slipped out. A folded piece of paper, tucked halfway under a throw pillow. I pulled it out. It was a printed email, and when I read the first line, my blood went cold. What was in that email? Who sent it? And how did one piece of paper reveal a conspiracy that had been building for months behind my back? You won't believe what I found. Subscribe now and hit that like button, because the next chapter is where everything explodes, and you'll finally understand why Winifred smiled. Don't miss this. The truth is worse than you think. Click subscribe now. I sat on my couch for 20 minutes, staring at that piece of paper, reading it once, twice, 3 times, because surely I was misunderstanding. Surely my own son wouldn't. But the words didn't change. The email was dated November 18th, 5 weeks before Christmas. The sender was my ex-wife, Leslie. The recipients were Derek and Winifred. Subject: moving forward with the plan. I read it slowly, my hands trembling. Derek, I spoke with Winifred's friend, the estate attorney I mentioned. She confirmed what we discussed. If Victor signs the house over willingly, or if we can demonstrate diminished capacity, we avoid probate entirely. The house is worth at minimum $280,000. Split between us, after expenses, that's nearly $90,000 each. My throat went dry. The key is creating distance. We need documented incidents where Victor appears unreasonable, controlling, or mentally unstable. Small things, overreactions, moments where he alienates himself from the family. Then, when the time comes, Patrick won't defend him. He'll see the pattern we've established. I stopped reading, put the paper down, picked it up again. Winifred suggested Christmas as the ideal opportunity. A family gathering, multiple witnesses, low stakes. She'll create a minor situation. Smoking indoors, something harmless, and if Victor reacts the way he usually does, we document it. If he overreacts, even better. We leave, make him look irrational, and begin establishing the narrative. The narrative? My mind raced back through the evening. Winifred lighting the cigarette without asking. The way she looked at Derek before responding to me. That smile. Derek's immediate escalation. "You've always been like this, Dad." The line about Leslie leaving. It was rehearsed. All of it. I kept reading, my stomach twisting. Patrick is the variable. He still believes Victor is competent and won't side with us easily. But if we're patient, if we build the case slowly, he'll eventually see what we see. An aging man who's becoming difficult, unreasonable, and possibly a danger to himself. A danger to myself. I'm 71 years old. I have high blood pressure and bad knees. But my mind is sharp. I pay my bills on time. I cook my own meals. I drive. I read. I manage my life without help from anyone. But they were going to paint me as incompetent. They were going to take my house. The house I bought 40 years ago with money I earned laying tile and building decks and working 60-hour weeks so my sons would have a backyard to play in. The house I kept in the divorce because Leslie didn't want it. She wanted cash and freedom and a condo with a view. This house was all I had left. And my son, my firstborn, The boy I taught to ride a bike, the man I co-signed a car loan for when he was 23 and had no credit, was trying to take it from me. I sat there as the Christmas lights blinked on the tree, as the music played softly in the background, as the dishes I'd washed by hand sat drying in the kitchen. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not sadness, not even anger. Clarity. I stood, folded the email carefully, and walked to my desk in the corner of the living room. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the document, front and back. Then I opened my laptop, scanned the paper, and saved 3 separate copies to different folders. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I called someone who owed me a favor, Desmond Cole, my late brother's attorney, a man I'd helped years ago when his father needed round-the-clock care and Desmond couldn't afford it. I'd lent him $15,000, never asked for it back, never mentioned it again. He picked up on the second ring. "Victor, it's Christmas night. Everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "It's not. But I need your help, and I need you to keep it between us." There was a pause. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The cigarette, the fight, the email. When I finished, the line was silent for a long moment. "Victor," Desmond said carefully, "do you understand what you're describing?" "I do. This is elder financial exploitation. It's a crime in this state." "I know. You could report this. Have it investigated." I closed my eyes. "I don't want investigators, Desmond. I don't want police reports or legal drama or my name in some case file. I want to protect what's mine, and I want them to understand they picked the wrong man to underestimate." Another pause. Then Desmond said, "What do you need from me?" I smiled for the first time all night. "I need you to help me disappear my assets, quietly, legally, and then I need you to help me set a trap." Desmond came to my house 3 days after Christmas. I didn't call Derek, didn't text, didn't chase him like he expected me to. I let the silence stretch, because silence makes people nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. Desmond sat at my kitchen table with a leather briefcase and a legal pad, and I told him exactly what I wanted. "First," I said, "I want my house protected, completely, so that even if I lost my mind tomorrow, no one could touch it." Desmond nodded, already writing. "An irrevocable trust. We transfer the deed into a trust with Patrick as trustee, assuming you trust him." "I do." Patrick had stayed quiet during the Christmas blow-up, but he'd also stayed. He'd looked uncomfortable when Derek attacked me, and more importantly, his name wasn't on that email. "Once the house is in the trust," Desmond continued, "you no longer technically own it. You can live in it for the rest of your life, but it can't be sold, seized, or transferred without Patrick's approval as trustee. Derek and Leslie won't be able to touch it, even if they convinced a court you were incapacitated." I felt a weight lift off my chest. "Good. What else?" "Your savings, any cash assets. We move those into a separate account, one they don't know about. If they're tracking your finances, we make it look like you've spent down your accounts. Gifts to charity, medical expenses, whatever makes sense." "I have about $43,000 in savings," I said. Desmond didn't flinch. "We'll move it. Open a new account at a different bank. Transfer it in stages so it doesn't raise flags. By the time they realize what happened, there won't be anything left to claim." I nodded slowly. "And the will?" "We rewrite it. Everything goes to Patrick and a charity of your choice, maybe a veterans organization or a children's fund. Something that makes it clear this was intentional, not an oversight." I thought about that. The Shelter Creek Children's Home. I used to donate there when I had more to give. Desmond made a note. "Perfect. We'll draft the new will, have it witnessed and notarized, and file it properly. If anyone challenges it later, the documentation will be airtight." "How long will this take?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. We'll move fast, but we have to do it right." I leaned back in my chair. "And then?" Desmond looked up from his notes. "Then we wait. You let Derek think he's won. You stay quiet. You don't engage. And when he's ready to make his move, when he comes back, all smiles and apologies, ready to help you with your estate planning, we spring the trap." I smiled. "I want to see his face when he realizes." "You will," Desmond said. "But Victor, you need to understand something. Once you do this, there's no going back. Derek will know you knew. He'll know you outmaneuvered him, and that might end your relationship permanently." I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "He ended it the moment he wrote that email. I'm just making it official." Desmond studied me. "All right then, let's get to work." Over the next 2 weeks, we moved in silence. I met with Desmond 4 times, always at his office, never at my house. We signed documents, transferred funds, filed paperwork. I opened a new bank account at a credit union across town, moved my savings in 3 separate transfers, $15,000, then $18,000, then the rest. To anyone tracking my old account, it looked like I was paying medical bills, making donations, living expenses. The house deed was transferred into the Patrick Hale Family Trust on January 9th. The new will was signed, witnessed, and filed on January 12th. And on January 14th, I did something that felt both terrifying and necessary. I called Derek. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice cautious. "Dad?" "Hi, son," I said, keeping my tone soft, apologetic. "I've been thinking about Christmas, about what happened, and you were right." Silence on the other end. "I overreacted," I continued. "I made a big deal out of nothing, and I ruined the day. I'm sorry." I could almost hear him recalibrating. "Dad, it's okay. I shouldn't have said what I said either." Lies. Smooth lies. "I was wondering," I said slowly, "if maybe you and Winifred could come by this weekend. I want to talk about some things. My estate, the house. I think it's time I got my affairs in order, and I'd like your help." The pause was brief, but I heard it. The shift. The hunger. "Yeah, Dad," Derek said. "Yeah, we can do that." Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. I woke at 6, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table reviewing the documents Desmond had prepared. Everything was in order. The trust paperwork, the new will, copies of the email chain I'd found, a timeline of events, a signed affidavit from Desmond confirming the legal transfers, and one more thing. A small recording device, no bigger than a car key fob, that Desmond had given me. "Just in case," he'd said. "If this goes sideways, you'll want proof of what was said." I tested it once, set it on the coffee table, and waited. Derek and Winifred arrived at 10. He wore a button-down shirt, the same one he'd worn to my brother's funeral. She wore a cream-colored sweater and that same confident smile. They looked like they were attending a business meeting, which I suppose they were. "Hey, Dad," Derek said, hugging me briefly. It felt rehearsed. "Victor," Winifred said warmly, kissing my cheek. "Thank you for reaching out. We've been worried about you." Lies wrapped in concern. Desmond was already there, seated in my armchair, his briefcase beside him. Derek noticed him immediately. "Desmond, I didn't realize you'd be here." "Victor asked me to help with some estate planning," Desmond said evenly. "I hope that's all right." Derek glanced at Winifred, then back at me. "Of course, that's smart, Dad. Really smart." We sat, Derek and Winifred on the couch, me across from them, Desmond to the side like a referee. I began, slowly. "I've been thinking a lot since Christmas, about getting older, about what happens to this house, my savings, everything I've worked for. And you were right, Derek. I need to get my affairs in order." Winifred leaned forward slightly, her expression sympathetic. "We're here to help, Victor. Whatever you need." "I appreciate that," I said. So I asked Desmond to draw up some documents, to make things clear, to make sure there's no confusion later. Derek nodded eagerly. "That's good. That's really good, Dad." Desmond opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. He slid it across the coffee table toward Derek. "This is the deed to the house," Desmond said calmly. "As you can see, it's now held in an irrevocable trust." Derek picked it up, frowning. "A trust? What does that mean?" "It means your father no longer owns the property. The Patrick Hale Family Trust owns it. Patrick is the trustee. Victor retains the right to live here for the rest of his life, but the house cannot be sold, transferred, or claimed by creditors, or other heirs, without Patrick's consent." The room went very quiet. Winifred's smile faltered. Derek's face paled. "Why would you do that?" he asked, his voice tight. I didn't answer. I just watched him. Desmond continued, his tone professional. "Victor also revised his will. Upon his passing, all remaining assets, including any cash, personal property, and life insurance, will be divided between Patrick Hale and the Shelter Creek Children's Home." Winifred's eyes narrowed. "So, Derek gets nothing." "That's correct," Desmond said. Derek stood abruptly. "Dad, what the hell is this? I'm your son, your firstborn. You're just going to cut me out?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded email, the one Winifred had dropped on Christmas Day. I placed it on the table between us. "You dropped this," I said quietly. Derek stared at it. Winifred's face went white. "Go ahead," I said. "Read it. Refresh your memory." Derek picked it up with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the words. His mother's words, his wife's plan, his name attached to all of it. When he finished, he looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something I'd never seen in my son's face. Fear. "Dad, I can explain." "You planned it," I said, my voice steady. "The cigarette, the argument, the insults. You wanted to make me look unstable so you could take my house. You and your mother and your wife sat down and strategized how to rob me." "That's not—" Winifred started. "Don't," I said, cutting her off. "I also filed a report with Adult Protective Services. Just a precautionary measure. They're aware of the situation. And this meeting, this conversation, is being recorded." I gestured to the device on the table. Derek's face crumbled. "Dad, please, I made a mistake. I got desperate. The business is failing and Mom got in my head and I—" "You chose," I said. "You chose greed over your father. You chose a plan over decency. And now you're choosing excuses over accountability." Winifred stood, grabbing her purse. "This is insane. You're a bitter, paranoid old man, and we're not going to sit here and—" "Then leave," I said. She froze. "Leave," I repeated, "just like you did on Christmas. Just like you planned to do once you had what you wanted." Derek looked at me, his eyes wet. "Dad, I'm sorry." And maybe he was. But sorry doesn't undo betrayal. "You can go now," I said. They left without another word. The door closed, and the house was silent again. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like peace. 3 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Derek, didn't hear from Winifred, didn't hear from Leslie. Patrick called twice to check on me. Jessica sent a text asking if I needed anything. I told them I was fine, and I was. The house felt lighter. The air felt clearer. I started sleeping through the night again. But on a Thursday afternoon in early February there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there stood Rose, my granddaughter, 16 years old, holding a duffel bag and crying. "Grandpa," she whispered, "can I stay with you?" I didn't ask questions. I just stepped aside and let her in. She dropped her bag in the hallway, collapsed onto my couch, and sobbed. I made her tea, sat beside her, waited. Eventually she spoke. "They've been fighting every day since that meeting. Mom's screaming about money. Dad's drinking again. And I can't be there anymore." My heart broke. "Does your father know you're here?" She nodded. "I told him I was coming. He didn't stop me." I pulled her into a hug and she cried into my shoulder the way she used to when she was little and fell off her bike. "You can stay as long as you need," I said. And she did. Rose lived with me for 2 months. We fell into a rhythm. She'd do homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner. We'd watch old movies on weekends. She taught me how to use half the features on my phone. I taught her how to make my mother's bread pudding. And slowly, she opened up. She told me she'd heard them on Christmas, heard Winifred coaching Derek, heard them laughing about playing the part. She'd wanted to warn me, but was afraid. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she said one night. "I should have told you." "You were protecting yourself," I said. "That's not wrong." In late March, Derek called. His voice was broken. "Dad, can I see you?" I almost said no. But then I looked at Rose, asleep on my couch with a blanket I'd tucked around her, and I thought about what kind of man I wanted to be. Not just for me, for her. "Come over Sunday," I said. 1 o'clock. He came alone. No Winifred, no rehearsed speeches, just my son, looking older and smaller than I remembered. We sat on the porch. Didn't say much at first. Finally, he spoke. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No," I agreed. "You don't." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "But I'm not doing this for you," I continued. "I'm doing it for Rose, and for me. Because holding on to this anger, it's been eating me alive." He looked up, hopeful. "I'm not ready to forget what you did," I said, "and I'm not ready to pretend it didn't happen. But if you want to rebuild, if you want to be the father Rose deserves, I won't stand in your way." "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. "It means you can visit. It means we can try. But the house, the money, that's done. You understand?" He nodded. "I understand." We sat in silence for a while longer, and then, for the first time in months, I saw something in my son's eyes I recognized. Shame, regret, and maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of change. I didn't forgive him that day, but I gave him a chance to earn it. So that's my story. A cigarette on Christmas. A conspiracy revealed. A family fractured and slowly healing. Derek comes by every Sunday now. He's sober, he's in therapy. He and Winifred divorced. He's working on himself. Rose still lives with me. She's thriving. She's talking about college. And me? I still have my house, my dignity, my peace. But more than that, I learned something. Revenge isn't just about winning. It's about deciding what you're willing to lose. And sometimes the greatest power you have isn't in punishing people. It's in choosing whether they get a second chance. Thank you for following Victor's journey. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, your own capacity for forgiveness, please subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me, what would you have done in Victor's position? Would you have forgiven Derek? Or would you have walked away for good? Your stories matter. Your voices matter. And if you want more true stories like this, stories about real people facing impossible choices, hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to try. Subscribe, like, share. Let's build a community of people who believe in second chances and strong boundaries. See you in the next story.